Jai Hind everyone. We welcome you to the show where we peep into the minds of the people who shape our day-to-day lives. This is Sanvad, the voice of Sunbeam. And today, sitting on the chair parallel to mine, is a man whose knowledge, skills and wisdom has truly left a great impact on each one of us. We have amongst us Mr. Parnab Mukherjee, a mentor, a guiding light and a guru whose words show us the way. Mr. Mukherjee is a veteran media analyst, knowledge resource curator and an eminent theatre director. Sir is renowned in the student community for reinventing campus quizzing and public speaking. As a quiz master, Sir has played a significant role in mentoring youth and expanding their gamut of knowledge. With his vast expanse of knowledge and experience, Sir leaves an everlasting impression on his disciples as he provides valuable insights on various topics. Good morning and Jai Hind, Sir.
Good morning.
For me to take this interview today is a moment of huge pride. But I have been attending your workshops and your conclaves since I was in 6th grade. And I think that those very events were the things that made me and are shaping me into the person I am today. So this leads me to my very first question. What did your foundational years look like? Who were some of the people that you looked up to, and what were their impacts on you and making you the person you are today?
See, one important part of growing up, as you correctly said, foundational years not only means early years of school or the transition from school, college to life, but also years that leave a mark in your mind, the years that shape the foundation in whichever foundation you have. So I think in my foundational years, and even now, a big influence for me has been the city of Calcutta, which I'm glad I grew up in. Everybody is glad they grew up in their cities because each city comes with its own smell, own sound, own ethos. I'm glad I grew up in Calcutta. The city was a huge influence. Of course, educational institution, yes, but more importantly, what the city did for me. For example, the city told me the importance of a public library. The city told me how to do theatre with almost zero or no money, and which doesn't mean Nukkad Natak only. It also means alternative way of looking and seeing. The city also told me that an afternoon in a bookshop is a perfectly normal way to lead life. The city told me if you told somebody you are a poet, it doesn't mean that somebody will ask you, so what do you do? Just saying a poet is enough. The city told me if you tell somebody if you're doing theatre, somebody will not ask you, okay, what's your profession? So it unpacked a lot of cliches for me. There are valid criticisms about Calcutta, about a city not very entrepreneur friendly, a city not very business friendly, a city that has a lot of protests, sometimes more than required, a city where people are impractical. There are too many dreamers compared to achievers. But I'm glad that they all existed. I'm not saying that some of these criticisms are not valid, Aditi. But I also believe that a lot of the city was shaped by the fact that people kept asking questions, rightly or wrongly, reasonably or unreasonably. Nothing was taken without asking questions. And that shaped my foundational years of people in a dharna, people in a protest, people in trying to make art and theatre out of protest. They all shaped, because for a very sensitive young mind, you don't think cinema means Bollywood. You think cinema means much more. You don't think books means कुछ चुने हुए बुक शॉप में पेंगुइन, रूपा और हार्पर कॉलिंस की किताब. Book is something more, small press, small magazines, small publishers, their work and effort. You don't think theatre means grand spectacle with light and costumes on stage. You see small theatre in intimate rooms where people are even more closer to your and my distance. And it leaves so much of a mark with you that you are glad that it all began there, my city.
Definitely, sir. In fact, while we are talking about how, foundational years are, so how was that side of yours, that theatrical, poetic side of yours, nurtured through reading, through, experiencing different things? What was the role that your school or your travels or, your family played during your very, foundational years of your life?
See, one interesting part of growing up in a Bengali family in Calcutta. When I mean Bengali family, I don't mean a Bengali surname. I would believe everybody who stays in Calcutta, in some way is a Bengali. Everybody who stays in Varanasi, in some way, has a piece of Varanasi in their heart. Everybody who stays in Delhi, a Delhiite. Here, I don't mean caste, creed, religion, identity, families staying for long or families that just came to the city, migrant, families who've been living for ages. I mean those who belong to the ethos of the city. So I think at the foundational years, at the growth years, adolescence, adulthood, getting into life, getting into assignments, getting my first job, to the point of time when I decided to go freelance, go solo in life. In all that, maybe one fundamental catharsis happened. And the fundamental catharsis is probably rooted in three things. One, encountering a area called College Street, which is a long street in Kolkata, filled with booksellers, textbook, second-hand book, new editions, new publications, little magazines, small press. College Street is a phenomena. The sight, sound, smells of College Street is very unlike such avenues in the world. I mean, there are great streets in the world with books, from Baghdad to Boston to London. There are great streets. But the smell of College Street, because I've grown up in College Street, is unique. So I think the first encounter was that street. Here was a street that kind of stoked your interest in books, that told you there's a universe or a world of books. And you're just a very small part of the universe, but it's a very welcoming universe. It's an universe without cutoff. It's an universe without mark sheets. It's an universe without intense competition of trying to get into a college, university, life, job. It's a welcoming place. It doesn't judge you over the fact that how fat is your wallet or how big is your debit card. Where do you belong? So I think that road was a great influence. It kind of triggered my reading. My house was very close to National Library. National Library is a walking distance from my house. So I always say I'm a child of National Library. I've grown up in the children's sections. I've walked into adult sections. I would generally call a lot of people uncle and auntie because they saw a young kid walking into the National Library. National Library is not just a great campus, a great institution. It's a place that once again tells you the importance of repository of books. So College Street, National Library, both I've been blessed to go. National Library was, of course, my neighbor. I mean, like I introduce a family as my neighbor, National Library is my family. Watching Badal Sarkar's theatre for the first time in a small room. 4 of us are in the audience. The people in the play were 8, audience was 4. A gamcha put in the floor at the end of the play, and you give whatever you want to. Even if you don't give any money, it doesn't matter. That again was a catharsis because I couldn't imagine that 8 people were doing a play for 4 people in the audience. I mean, what money do you make? You make no money. And then you realize their objective was not to make money. Their objective was not to become famous. Their objective was not to become popular. Their objective was not to be known. They will do 5,000 shows. It will reach people. Some show will have 10,000 people, some will have 2. But the 2 or the 10,000 will be done with equal intensity. So that again was a catharsis. No tickets, no queue, no light, no air-conditioned auditorium, in a small room, a bunch of people are doing theatre and doing real good, political, relevant theatre. So maybe Baraldas Theatre, College Street, National Library, and maybe the first experience of watching Auguste Rodin's exhibition, the great French sculptor, in the lawns of Birla Academy, was another great catharsis, because that opened me to a world which I'm deeply grateful to, the world closest to my heart, much, much, much more closer than even debating or theatre, the world of visual arts and the world of visual art curation. All of a sudden, that opened another world. One of the greatest sculptors of the world, Auguste Rodin, his exhibition is my backyard. My parents have taken. I saw a line which was like 3 kilometers long in the road, waiting to see a sculpture exhibition. Unthinkable. So many people in the road are just waiting to watch an exhibition. What can it do to a young child? It tells you that, these are finer aspects of life, a little more important. You're not standing on a line for UPSC tuition. You're not standing on a line to get a college form. You're not standing on a line to get a ration card. You're standing on a line to watch a free sculpture exhibition of one of the greatest sculptors of the world. I'm lucky that the exhibition had come to the city. So I think amongst various other influences of sight, smell and sound, these three are ones that stick on to my memory, and I can't forget it.
Definitely, sir. In fact, while we are speaking of cities, Banaras is often criticized for being too far on the right side. And we as young students are growing up in this city which is apparently said to not be open to new ideas and to progress. So how do we jump out of that very bubble, and how do we learn to question the world around us?
See, Varanasi is an amazing city. In my interactions and in my deep privilege of serving the city in whatever capacity, I've worked with young minds here, older minds here. I think one has to see one fundamental thing we have to realize is, which I always say, whether it's in a podcast or in a talk or in a speech, I always say that, the fundamental is शहर के बीच वाला शहर, the city within the city. Here the city means a heart. So the city inside the city. I guess many of us live in many cities for years, 30 years, 40 years, 20 years, 15 years, 10 years, and we don't know our city. We know home, office, office, home, school, school, home, school, shopping, occasional entertainment, eating out, home, relatives, shopping, home. There is much more to that city within the city. It's not touristy, it doesn't have landmarks, it's not about relatives, it's not about people you know. So I think in Banaras, if one were to look at the city inside the city, and you can be a Banarasi and still not know city within the city, then you would know it's a very, very modern city steeped in spiritual value. But you have to unlock the city within the city. So for example, there is a Kabir's Banaras, there is a Raidas Banaras, there is a place, there's a plaque inside the Varanasi Central Jail, which is close to your school, a stone's throw, which is a place commemorated where the British police beat up Chandrasekhar Azad with a cane. That place is commemorated. It gives me goosebumps to think here was one of the finest minds of Hindustan Socialist Republican Association who was caned by the police. And of course caned because he was in custody. I mean, he could have done much more by caning back. It's just that he was under their control. But under their control in terms of custody, not in terms of his mind. He was a free mind, he was a free soul. We still have the tree in Allahabad, Prayagraj, where he had the gun in the hand for self-defense. And when the last last kind of skirmish happened, and Azad went to the heavens. So there is this Banaras of this landmark of Chandrasekhar Azad in the city. There's a Banaras Gopinath Kaviraj. There's a Banaras Bhagwan Das. There's a Banaras of, say a school in Sonarpura, which has 11 martyrs from the Kakori train action. And this is a Banaras. Sometimes, maybe a Banarasi will not unlock. Sometimes, maybe not even care to know. There is a Banaras, when I go to Gurudham Mandir and I enter Gurudham Mandir, I see two lions. I had a privilege of doing a play in Gurudham Mandir production. There are two lions which I saw in Venice. Amazing. A Venetian St. Mark's lion in the architecture of Janarayan Ghoshal's Gurudham Mandir. Who was this man, Janarayan Ghoshal? How did he make this amazing tantric formation of a mandir? When I walk across the streets of Kardameshwar or the water body near Shul Tankeshwar, there is another Banaras for me. Another Banaras for me when I'm inside a Harmony bookshop. See, there is modernity in the city. There is this beautiful confluence of ancientness, medievalness, older smell and sight and sound, and modernity, kind of trying to always fit into each other. Not always fitting, but that debate is there. The point is, who will show you that debate? Who will show you the city within the city? See, somebody says, I'm a Tate Banarasi. Are you a Tate Banarasi because you have Malayo? Are you a Tate Banarasi because you have Kaju Katli? Are you a Tate Banarasi because you have Banarasi Pan? Are you a Tate Banarasi because you go to Aghat? I don't think these are reasons to be Tate Banarasi. Are you a Tate Banarasi to appreciate Raidas? Are you a Tate Banarasi to go into the skin of Kabir? Are you a Tate Banarasi to know about Raidas's concept of Begumpura, which is actually Begumpura, a world without sorrows? Are you a Tate Banarasi to really go through the 30 days of Ramnagar Ramlila and not take telephone photographs of Nati Imli Bharat Milap, but go a little more deeper? So I think Banaras is a modern city. You just have to know the city within the city.
Definitely, sir. In fact, whenever we ask the question of are we global citizens, we forget that it starts from our very own landmarks, our very own cities. And speaking of which, another question comes to mind. For us debaters or quizzers, we always ask after a debate or a quiz, what next? How to, work forward with this. However, for our viewers who are still new to these crafts, what would you suggest as to where to start and how to start?
I think whether you are debating, quizzing, doing visual arts, taking part in choreography, which requires you to choreograph a certain content, certain literature, and not just, mindlessly just copy a film song or mindlessly copy an action from YouTube. In any of the cases, I think what begins is our relationship with the field. What I mean to say is, for example, you've taken your podcast equipment, sometimes an audio podcast, so audio equipment, sometimes audio and video. So you take a camera, you take some audio equipments, and you've gone to a bricklane laborer near Mirzapur on the Chunar Road. Not even to Mirzapur, on the Chunar Road. Or you've gone to a old toy shop near Lorar Kund. All of a sudden, your podcast is not in an air-conditioned studio with sound. All of a sudden, you're bang in the middle of a city in a community, talking to people about their joys and sorrows, their their sense of having and not having. So similarly, for a debater, you will not debate for a World Cup like you'll play football for a World Cup. You won't quiz for a World Cup. You will not dance, to take part in some championships alone. Why would you still do it? And what's your next step forward? A very important question that you ask. So what's next? So what's next is, can I use my skill and collaborate, not teach, collaborate with the community and give them the access to these worlds that enriched me? Which means, would a debater ever go to a blind school and learn about darkness from them and about light from them in a very different way from what he or she perceives as light and darkness? And will he or she give his time, for about, say, 4 years of their lives, say from class 8 to 12, and one day have the satisfaction of seeing that blind school kid debating with you on the same platform? Winning or losing is not the point. The point is, it is expected that when I'm debating or quizzing, a child will not be from the blind school. It is expected a guy who's a girl or a guy who's quizzing or doing theater or say doing painting or sculpture, I'll not call anybody from the blind school. Why won't you call? They're normal kids like you are. So what next? Social collaboration. What next? Deeper social collaboration. What next? Like Sunbeam Varuna is doing community library, telling community to come to your library. What next after that library? Taking some of your books and doing a storytelling in the slums. Taking library to them, then always expecting them to come to your library. So what next for a debater? To actually debate in real life in the community. What next for a quizzer? To read something more that he will not generally read. And he will read something more only when you go to community and say, okay, let me find out what their problem is. Let me read a little more deeper. What more for a dancer? To use choreography and to see, I don't need light, sound, makeup. Let me do it bang in the middle of a slum. Let me see how they react. Nobody is a bad audience, provided you seek an audience. So I think, what next? Does your craft contains a social conscience? If it does, it gives you immense satisfaction that you're a debater. Otherwise, we are doing verbal gymnastics, nothing else.
Definitely, sir. In fact, when we speak of, understanding and exploring different spaces, it all starts from traveling, whether you do it within your city or outside of it. So we'd love to know more about your travels from a young age and how did they shape you?
All kinds of travels in and outside the country. If I look at India, a country hopefully I'll be able to complete in my lifetime, an amazing country, large country. When I mean completing, I don't only mean that you tick boxes and go to every state of India, every union territory of India and you say, I've gone all over India. No. Have you deeply worked there? If not worked there, have you stayed there for some time to at least get some of their smell and sound? So yeah, I mean, a lot of places have changed. I'm deeply grateful to the city of Imphal. Manipur has changed me in so many ways. It taught me finer points of appreciating visual arts, finer point of appreciating physical theatre, opening up a world of Haistam Kanayalal and the living legend Lokendra Arambam, two of my very, very deeply favorite theatre practitioners, gurus. people who are like foundations of your own theatre pedagogy. Imphal has greatly, greatly inspired me. I've been greatly inspired by tea gardens of Darjeeling, laborers, families, people working in tea gardens, people sometimes fighting when gardens have been closed, asking tough questions that why have you declared a lockout. Darjeeling has a great influence on me. I'm deeply, deeply influenced by City of London, because there is history at every corner. There is so much of history that sometimes you're overwhelmed by history. And there are histories at very unusual places. I remember one day I was walking to Sadler Wells. Sadler Wells is the Mecca for dancers, a great, great dance destination of the world. And while I was walking on the road, walking towards Sadler Wells, blue plaque in London. Now there are many Indian cities with blue plaques, which is a little bit of history in the name of the person, of a famous person who've stayed in that house before. So while I was walking towards Sadler Wells, I looked at a small blue plaque in a house where Sri Aurobindo stayed. And I said, amazing. Similarly, in the Kingsley Hall in London, I was shooting still shoot, photography shoot of an installation that I did. That's the place where Gandhiji stayed. And then there is a 221B Baker Street address, which is a fictional address and now a reality, which just occurred in Sherlock Holmes. So there is Marx's London, Karl Marx's London, Gandhi's London, Baba Saheb Ambedkar's London, Raja Ram Mohan Roy's Bristol, another city where I was looking at history when I looked at Raja Ram Mohan Roy's grave. There is an amazing bookshop called City Lights in San Francisco, one of my favorite bookshops in the world, Bay Area. A bookshop of protest, a bookshop of some amazing poems that changed the world, like Allen Ginsberg's Howl. There was a court case against it. Ginsberg won the case. So City Lights, the bookshop. Of course, Shakespeare and Company in Paris as a bookshop. Of course, say a very, very enduring memory is maybe going to Gerak Budaya in Kuala Lumpur, an important Malaysian bookshop. Very important memory is performing in Bali, in Indonesia, and looking at Ramayana and Mahabharata in a different light. One of my loveliest memories are in Chittagong, in Dhaka. A very lovely memory is my interesting train ride from Paris to Venice. Interesting memory is going back to a Don Bosco Memorial in Venice and remembering my school, Don Bosco in Calcutta, and going to Don Bosco's place in Italy. So yeah, travels have, they've really shaped me, I think. There is no better teacher than traveling. There will be no better teacher traveling. There can be no better teacher than traveling. And there can be no better teacher than traveling in books. Traveling makes you travel physically, and book makes you travel a little faster than physical traveling. Yeah, so Aditi, these cities and more, every Indian city. Just the other day I was in Balia, and I was taking school kids. First to Jayaprakash Narayan's ashram in Balia, and then crossing over to Bihar and taking them to Jayaprakash Narayan's house in the Bihar side. And this was in the UP side. And I remembered JP and JP's contribution to this wonderful nation. The other day I was taking kids from Mau to Nizamabad near Azamgarh, famous for black pottery, to a Gurdwara which had the Kharao of Guru Nanak and Guru Tegh Bahadur. Just the other day I was taking them. And Daulat Ibrahim Khan's tomb. I've taken kids from Ghazipur and walked across Buxar. Not the famous Buxar wars, also Buxar Ghats. I've taken kids from Patna and along with them discovered Bodh Gaya. I've taken kids from Bodh Gaya and discovered Ara Chhapra Siwan, Motiari. So, George Orwell's birthplace. So, it's very interesting to kind of get into cross-cultural conversations. If travel has taught me any one fundamental thing, it taught me that your mind doesn't require a visa. If your mind doesn't require a visa, either have an active mind or just be a status quo, safety, ghar and mendak lover. Yeah.
Definitely, sir. And I think traveling is not just about taking a train from one city to another. It's also about what you see from your eyes, traveling back to your mind, then to your vocal cords, back to all of your senses. And that leads me to another question. Sir, whenever we've debated, whenever we've quizzed or anything, we've always seen your perspective on when it comes to Africa, when it comes to parts of different continents that we do not research. So how did that perspective come to you of knowing the other continent better than the person living in that continent does? And, the places where it takes you.
See, some of the greatest books in the world I've encountered have looked at cities where an author has never gone to. One such book is called Chader Pahar. In Bangla, it's called Chader Pahar. In English, it can be called Moon Mountain. So, the writer is Bibhuti Bhushan Banerjee, the man whose work Satyajit Ray made into a very famous film called Pather Pachali. Now, here is Bibhuti Bhushan Banerjee sitting in jungles of Chotanagpur in Bihar, writing a complete novel on Africa. He's never gone to Africa ever in his life. He hardly ever went to Delhi in his life, leave alone Africa. He's imagining a continent. He's imagining people. He's imagining sight, smell, sound, sense of discovery. So I guess, sometimes very early in life, if you're hooked onto books, what it does is, it tells you not going somewhere doesn't mean you really know the place. But not going somewhere doesn't really mean that you don't know issues. I don't have to go to Bhopal. Of course I went to Bhopal, I've worked in Bhopal. But you don't have to go to Bhopal to understand the enormity of Bhopal gas tragedy. To know that that's your Hiroshima. You don't have to go to Dombari Baru, but it'll be nice if you go to Dombari Baru if you know the place. That's like Jharkhand's Jallianwala Bagh. So sometimes early exposure to books and travel, I wouldn't say books only, but books a major part of it, gives you the peep that you probably weren't there. You are definitely not there in the America of Abraham Lincoln. But you will understand how dehumanizing is slavery. You would have not had coffee with Babasaheb Ambedkar. But you can peep into his mind and know that why do we still have politics of surname in South Asia? Why is somebody even now is called a Dalit? So I guess Africa stemmed from the fact that Bibhuti Bhushan Banerjee and the writer and Chader Pahar set me on a trail, and that trail took me to Steve Biko. It took me to Nelson Mandela. It took me to a Tagore poem called Africa, whereas Tagore has never gone to Africa. It took me to Kanaiyalal's play Memories of Africa, based on a long Manipuri poem. It took me to so many places that I started knowing that you can also know a continent very intimately without visiting there. I'm still not saying knowing replaces traveling, but I'm saying that you could well travel in that country and still know nothing about it. You may go to a country and may not know the suffering masses. You may just go and see a Photoshop nation, do your shopping and come back. At least the book set me on a trail in knowing a continent and knowing it intimately. And of course, if you are someone, at least I am, I hope I am, disciple of Gandhi, I can't not know Africa. Because Mohandas goes to Africa and returns back as Mahatma. So the continent that shapes Gandhi's destiny, I think it's a country that not just I have to know, we've got to know, because it's a matter of great shame that world's biggest democracy, India, and a continent called Africa is not in UN Security Council. It's a historical wrong. It's quite disgusting that the Security Council doesn't have these two important components. So all the more reason to know Africa, because how can the cradle of human civilization be lost in our loving the West too much, loving the white man too much? And the white man here is not the color of the skin, the white man syndrome in our mind.
Definitely, sir. In fact, while we are speaking of a Mahatma Gandhi or a Jawaharlal Nehru or even a Bhagat Singh, we hear criticism about them, we hear controversy about them, with statements coming up like great people are never good people or great people cannot be good people. So would you agree with that statement in these specific contexts?
No, I don't, because for the simple reason that they were humans like us. You know, the only difference between them and us is they transformed way too much to become what they were, and we didn't transform too much. Gandhiji, Bhagat Singh, Baba Saheb Ambedkar, they don't have to be perfect. They were also not looking for perfection. What they were was catharsis, transformation. A man thrown out of the train and realizing what it means to be thrown out. Baba Saheb Ambedkar, I can give you 200 such incidents, 2 million such incidents where he's been denied it every time in his life. And each time he came back with a logic that you just can't deny. So I think they are people who really transformed. We are people who didn't transform at all. But hopefully, the least we could do is understand their transformation. So they were great people, not because they were perfect. They were great people because they could just transform and be of use to society. We are trying in their footsteps. Hopefully we are trying in their footsteps. Hopefully we'll try in their footsteps. If you forget their footsteps, we'll just nitpick one or two faults of theirs and never have the nazariya, the drishtikon, to look at their their transformation, I'm sorry.
Definitely, sir. In fact, be it a Gandhi or an Ambedkar, they are what the people are. They are a compilation of a community, of a society, and a society can never be perfect. Which also leads me to another question of, while we were talking about your foundational years, I wanted to ask you, if as a young child, did you imagine yourself to be in the same position as you are today, or were there different ambitions or interests that you had?
The young child, I wanted to write. And the only way then I knew, at least, was called print journalism. Studied my print journalism both in English and Bangla. While doing journalism, I realized there are way too many stories to be told which a newspaper can't always publish because there's editorial policy. There's also marketing advertising policy. So you can't tell all stories. You're not always free to tell all stories. What's the next method of telling a story? To me, more compelling than cinema was theatre. Then I felt theatre will also not always tell stories. You have to go deeper. So next was visual arts. Then you realize visual arts will also not tell all stories. Get back into grassroots debating. Then you realize that grassroots debating is also sometimes elitist. Get back deeper into it. And then you realize little magazine. Then you realize that magazine can also have a finite circulation. And then you get, deeper into it and probably you think that at least for those who have access to technology, make a vibrant, politically conscious Instagram page. Then you believe that an Instagram page is also instant gratification. Think of the next medium. So I've had a lot of creative dissatisfactions that fueled my next journey and next journey and next journey. So am I a confused theatre maker who speaks? Maybe I am. Am I a confused speaker who does theatre? Maybe I am. But I'm definitely a grassroots level archivist, trying to find out the next medium to tell stories about people who the society has made them invisible.
Definitely, sir. In fact, while we are speaking of stories, there are many stories that a few students cannot tell. We have a lot of issues with our parents when they see that, okay, someone wishes to travel. Parents are not allowing them. And I think that these problems we have faced as, debaters traveling out of the city. So what would you suggest us to, imbibe in our lives so that we can, at least convince our parents to go out of the city?
See, convincing is also a mixture of safety. It's a mixture of schedules, exams, immediate goals. It's a mix of so many other factors. I think the only thing you could convince them, and I'm sure they'll be convinced because they'd like you to have a life, more vast than theirs. All parents want it. Is to merely and fundamentally say that if you have to leave me alone in this world, for me to find my own profession, and then I'll have adjustment problems in a city, cultural problems in a city. Can I start early? Can I learn how to adjust to diversity? Can I learn how to be safe and call you, then be monitored in a video call for 24 hours? Can I begin my adjustments in all kinds of milieu? I have to begin early. I think if you're really passionate about saying that I've got to stand on my own feet, I've got to have my own financial independence, I would probably marry when I would like to. Till then, I'd like to see a little bit of the world. There is no marriageable age and there is no manageable age. We all arrive at it. So to arrive at it, I have to travel. Maybe that's the only thing you can say. Or I hope you can.
Definitely, sir. While we are speaking of interesting journeys and traveling, as a journalist, you have worked with Sports World, The Asian Age, and Sambad Pratidin. How did how did that happen, sir? What routes did you have to take to reach there?
Sports World was a very small stint. You can call it internship. It's like an intern. Sambad Pratidin, The Asian Age was a deeper journey, as you mentioned. Far more deeper journey. Routes, I would say the only fundamental route was throughout my life I wanted to do a field job, not a desk job. In journalism also you have desk, people who are copy editors, people who make pages. And maybe interestingly, maybe it can be jack of all trades and master of none. Hopefully, a master of some, at least try to be. When I mean master, I don't mean master, a little mastery. Mastery can also be at a scale of 100. It can also be a scale at a 50. I'm fine with a 50 if I'm becoming 52 next year and 53 the year after that. Chipping away and trying to be somewhat, somewhere relevant to people. I think, I wanted to travel. I think I had a flair for writing. I think I was bilingual, which is important. There's one thing called speaking Bangla and there's one thing called doing Bangla journalism. There's one thing called speaking Hindi and there's another thing called doing Hindi journalism. दो अलग बात है. घर में बोलचाल हिंदी और हिंदी जर्नलिज्म करना एक बात नहीं है. घर में 10 बांग्ला बात बोलना और बांग्ला जर्नलिज्म एक बात नहीं है. So I think I was bilingually relevant enough to write both the languages with equal flair. So I did work as a journalist, and I was a little open to things in the sense that I didn't want to be a political journalist who couldn't write about sports. I didn't want to be a sports journalist, marked sports journalist who can't write politics. I didn't want to be a journalist only seen on fashion shows and book launches. I want to be a journalist who's actually working on municipal corporation beats, people on the road. I think that helped a lot because some did like fashion shows more. No criticizing. You could write a great report on a fashion show also. I didn't want. I'm not criticizing who wants. So I could get into multiple experiences and my reading helped.
Definitely, sir. In fact, we all know that you are from an economics background. You're also keen when it comes to mathematics. While doing all of that, you also had a command on the subjects of humanities. Of course, not with the rigid separation that we have between them, but with the fluidity that was not there present at that time as it is as of right now. However, sir, with everything that you could do, be it chess, be it economics or mathematics or so much more, you chose later to work with students. How did that perspective occur to you?
See, one is, I'm a print journalist, so I'm a lover of grassroots. So, student was an option because you wanted to work in grassroots. Students is the best grassroots you can ever have. Second of all, there is something called orientation. You could have taken economics or you could have taken maths as life took you. But the orientation, that doesn't mean you hate those subjects. You still love them. But the orientation kind of took me to things that would make me travel. And I felt that journalism and theatre could. And therefore, the progression was to have an economic point of view, but to choose a profession that makes you travel. So even if you're doing Shakespeare, you're doing Kalidas, or you're doing, say, a work of Sumitranandan Pant, you will still look at economic realities inside the work. You will not deny economics, but you don't have to be an economist just because you've done economics. So I think that kind of an inflection point happened in my life. Nobody can take away economics from me, but let me put it in another subject. Let me see where can it take me. And it happened.
Definitely, sir. And in fact, as students, we are in a country where the education system is based loosely on rote learning. And sometimes we do not understand why theatre is important for us. Why is creative writing or a visual arts important for us? Why are we learning a Shakespeare or an Othello in a world where we have no use for it? So, sir, what would you like to say for
I think with
all those
LEP
questions?
things are changing. We are looking at new perspectives. We are doing our course correction. NEP in spirit will take you to another direction if people understand the real spirit of putting NEP as a great vision document into work. But I think beyond all the syllabus, I have a simple thing. I think as we are we've covered so many issues in our conversation. So So one fundamental final thing which comes as a crux of all these statements. Have one passion, I always say, which is different from academics. It is academic, but not syllabus academics. So, if you think that you can study human emotion, you understand people. How do you understand people? What prepares you for it? Everybody is not a psychology student. Great literature, great music, great poetry. So you're reading Othello, not so that you have to be a specialist in Shakespeare, but it gives you one more perspective of understanding people. Good people who understand good people bring goodness. So I think the idea is also not to teach, not to feel that academic syllabus is my only destiny. If I have to travel, if I have to fit in, I have to know people. And what better to know people through various means of great literature, including Shakespeare.
Definitely, sir. In fact, this conversation has been very, very valuable to a
Thank you so
point
much.
where, in fact, we wanted to ask you so many questions, but a simple podcast is not enough for the experiences that we can have while we are traveling with you or while we are reading things that you tell us about. However, we are still grateful that you could join us, and thank you to all our viewers who were there for this amazing conversation filled with wisdom, experiences, and so much more. We are truly grateful to have amongst us Mr. Parnab Mukherjee. Thank you and Jai Hind, everyone.